All right, welcome everyone back to the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. Today we have a special edition interview with Brian Flynn from Super 7. Of course, we're also joined by Matt Cardona and Brian Myers. Brian, thank you for joining us.
That's all right. Thank you guys for having me. We're ready to do the Brian and Confusion show.
It's what you're one of our favorite interviews because you keep it real and we get the real feedback. I think that collectors, in this era, collecting has become so substantial and there's so much to it, I guess. And so, the adult collector, some of the information that only you have, it's great to have you on to educate, the listeners and the fans about some of the information that you have that, the average Joe just can't really get.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working with you guys for ever since WWE fired us. And it's been a great partnership, if you will. I remember you contacted us like right away, and you really, whether you know it or not, you kind of jump started our new careers because we're like, okay, we gotta design gear for these figures, so we had to speed up the whole creative process. Well, okay, what do I want to look like from now on? So we had to do it because the figures were coming out. So we kind of have you to thank for that. So thank you very much.
I'm going to say it's a wonderful segue, but I don't believe a word of it. I believe that you have a master plan.
No, I don't, because when we were talking, we're in our 90-day no compete clause, so we weren't even allowed to wrestle anywhere else or do anything. So you're trying to imagine what you will be in 3 months from now, So he is correct in saying that, the first creative outlet for that was designing these figures and their new gear and our looks.
I guess you have an outline, but when you got to get it specific, you need an exact outfit. So you kicked us right in the ass for that, and in a good way. So thank you. And now the fans finally have those figures. And man, you got to see how many we sign at these signings. People come.
I'm rich.
Every weekend.
I'm rich, Brian. I'm rich. I'm rich.
They're just amazing figures once you take them out of the package, but the packaging is just unbelievable. Mark, can you pull those old ones up on the screen? Just
Absolutely.
I mean, everyone by now has them. But I'm super proud of these. We were talking off air about how we have this guy, D Freedom, who painstakingly went through and made sure everything was as accurate as possible. And you guys, you put up with us, so we thank you again for that, because I know
it was probably
a little
nuts.
nitpicky.
Probably nuts at times.
No, it's I'm trying to think of I reframe this like 8 ways, but we all want it to be right.
Right.
The most professional wrestler. We want it to be right.
Look how beautiful that looks autographed.
Man, the promos start early.
Sorry.
We want to get it right. And when you're dealing with it sounds silly, but when you're dealing with something that you deal with Darth Vader, you got to deal with his lightsaber has to be red, and there's a couple buttons on his chest, and you're kind of done. It's not a lot of work. And when you're dealing with some of this other stuff and you're trying to replicate people, especially, wrestling gear, as everybody's gear gets more and more custom and more complicated. You're not just wearing, yellow briefs and some standard issue boots.
Yeah.
One little detail gets a guy like, oh, how did they miss that? And it's like, well, I'm actually trying to catalog 200 different details. And that's where one thing getting lost, or it's not even on us, it's somewhere along the process gets missed. And that can result in all sorts of complete and utter chaos.
And I guess that's a perfect segue to this. Yeah. I mean, we have the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. We're the guys who are critiquing Mattel and Jazzwares for missing a detail. So when we're having our own figures, we got, well, damn, we can't miss anything. And luckily you guys were perfect
right
with
there at the
email
last
back
minute.
and forth.
Yeah, last minute we were going back and forth on white versus silver on the knee pads.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah, and we fixed it.
And that line is what, 1/16 of an inch? 1/32 of an inch?
Yeah.
And it was no, that line is silver, not white. And it's like, okay, we got to get a new sample, get a new sample.
He was showing me, and I was like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. When you were getting down to that detail, I couldn't tell. Like my eyes couldn't see it.
And this is another thing, I'm sure you can explain it later, dealing with all this during COVID. right? We're just going off pictures, right? So apparently it was silver the whole time, but in the pictures we're getting, it looked white. So I thought it was correct until like the very last picture. I'm like, wait a minute, it's silver. But that's because we weren't, obviously we're not meeting up with you guys in the office, checking these out. We're not like on the road coming by, checking these out. So I can't even imagine how things are, and probably still are for you guys dealing with the world, how it is, and making figures.
Yeah, I mean, Vietnam opened on January 1st to foreign nationals with a passport and vaccination status. We had people in the factory of Vietnam June. Sorry, I said January. June 1, we had people in the factory June 4th. So they flew on June 2nd because we wanted to make sure that the date didn't push June 1.
Wow. Whoa.
So when the date didn't push June 1, people were on a plane June 2nd, landed June 3rd, and were in the factory June 4th. But that's on the Vietnam side. On the China side, you still can't go if you're a national. So if you're not Chinese, and even if you are Chinese, it's still a mandatory 10-day quarantine once you enter. Like if you're going from Hong Kong to China, just go, even though it's all part of China now, going over 10 days in quarantine before you can go to the factory. So we're still not able to go. And I mean, there's no way to, like, I can be on a video chat with you guys, and I can be, I'm going to keep teasing you with these test shots, and I can be holding up something like this and going like, this thing right here, like you feel that, it's not going right. Like, it's not the same as when you're in the room with the person. Like, you need to be able to do this, and this part's wrong. This part's too tight. This part's too loose. This isn't sitting on the peg right. You can't replicate that over Zoom or over photos and over JPEGs. And no different than any of the other relationships in your life, if you will. When you see somebody on a regular basis, there's a rapport, there's an expectation, you know how to deal with that person. The longer you're apart, the more things get loosey-goosey. They're not sure about stuff. Stuff shows up and you're like, why did you even send me this? Like, that's wrong. Maybe there's a new person. Maybe that person left, Yeah. And so the longer we get away from being in the factories, the longer it takes to get the product right, because you've got somebody going over there. Same thing. Like, is it white or is it silver? Who cares? No one can tell the difference. And you're like, no, people can tell the difference, and it needs to be this. That means I have to make a whole new sample, photograph it again, put it in the mail, make sure you get it. Do you approve it? Yes. Then you have to send it back so I can match it. Like, there goes 2 weeks trying to make a knee pad.
Man.
Well, I would apologize for that, but I'm not sorry one bit.
But the point is if we can get it right, let's get it right. For you and I, in working on this, there's no hard date. I mean, obviously we want to deliver in a timely fashion, but it's not like if it's not there for this event, we've lost the momentum.
Right.
It's like, no, the point is we want to get it right and deliver it correctly. So then we take the time that is appropriate. I can say that we'd be doing things faster if we could be in the factory, because like a paint change is a perfect example. Like, oh, we need to update this paint. They go upstairs, repaint it, bring it back down an hour later. And I go, yeah, that's correct. Okay, check off. Otherwise, it's change this paint. They go paint it, take a photo. I can't tell from the photo. It could be bad light. I have to send it to me. Then I have to get it. It's like every paint change takes a week. When it's like, make this blue one shade darker. So,
that's something like, I think the common wrestling figure fan doesn't, I don't think about the stuff like this.
I think their nature is to just complain without thinking about stuff like that, right?
I think that's all of our nature.
Yeah, right. I guess that's everyone. Yeah, but
we have a podcast where we critique figures all the time, so we're
I mean, it's part of it. But we also, I mean, when something's phenomenal, we say it's phenomenal. Right. And I think, I think a lot of wrestling figure fans were not used to the pre-order system. I think there was that wild, bizarre photo session of New Japan 1 where they looked like bootleg figures for some reason.
Oh, they look like
finally it was bizarre. But anyway, finally now we have New Japan 1, New Japan 2. We have us, the Good Brothers, in the hands of wrestling figure fans for a while now. And I think it's really like kicked the door down where people are going, okay, Super 7 is the real deal. Like, this is a quality product. So all those hurdles aside, I think the mission was accomplished after all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because like you
I'm
said,
trying my best not to make it shitty.
no, I mean the wrestling figure fan, because when they hear pre-order, right, they're thinking, oh, it's on Ringside Collectibles, and then I can just wait like 3 months to get it in Target or Walmart. No, it's Super 7. It's the order. And then
That's it.
I don't think the fans understood that. We were trying to educate them as best as we could, but I think now the figures, we proved, all because of you guys, that the figures were worth the wait. So I mean, it's definitely my favorite wrestling figure, not only because it's me, but because I know it's so accurate. Every little detail, the zipper, the buttons, it's exact. I would literally, we got a picture from you guys, I would take my gear, lay it on the floor, and then zoom in on the pictures to make sure it was exact. I mean, you guys killed it, and we thank you for that. And our fans, we know our fans love it. We know they do.
Well, and thank you guys for letting us do it. Obviously, we're trying to have fun making these figures, and when people get them, to have fun and enjoy them and get them and just have them be everything they expected them to be and more. I mean, you guys touch on the packaging. That's why, top to bottom, it's like the entire experience should be awesome. Like the box doesn't have to be something you throw away, or it's just a blister on a crappy card where, it's like, all right, for you guys, same thing. Like we always do the slip cases and everything else, but then we're like, no, we're going to put the belts on top too. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, it makes it so much more fun. Like, how can you not be happy about a figure that's got a wrestling belt on it, on the package?
It's amazing.
I was about to say, because you can slide the belt off the sleeve.
Oh yeah, and then our logos are underneath too. There's so many.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. To be honest, I almost wish the good people of Super 7 could come with us on like a signing and see all the nice things and the responses that people say to us, like when they meet us in person and they have these figures in person and they're so genuinely blown away by the quality, and just it's been really, really cool experience,
Absolutely.
Not to mention the $20 bills they throw at me like wherever I go. But, it's pretty rad though. It's been a really awesome experience. Yeah. So much so that we've kicked into gear. We've launched Wave 2 or Series 2, however you want to look at it, of the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast figures. I think people were blown away with like the outfit choices we chose and the accessories, the ring gear, the middle fingers. Let's get into it a little bit.
Mark, can we pull those up real fast?
Absolutely.
You guys were like, let's make it easy for them this next time. Let's
we cut some heads, right? We did.
Oh my Lord. Especially Matt's gear is like, how do I make this impossible to come out of a mold? Let's do that. And let's make that. And it's like, oh my God, this is going to be, it's fun to solve, but it's still like, holy shit, this is going to be some work.
They're spectacular though.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, it's because I trusted you guys that I chose this gear. I could have chose something more dumbed down and played like, if anybody could kill this gear and knock it out of the park, it's you guys. And then, we've seen these pictures for a couple of weeks, if not a month, and we were so blown away and so excited. We've been hyping them up. First middle finger for wrestling figures, which I'm pretty proud of. I don't know if my mom is, but I'm happy about it. And
likewise.
And
obviously, new
again,
packaging.
the packaging is it's similar but different enough, so it goes with the first two, but it's a different color scheme. And if you look at the initial responses when we posted this on Instagram, it's people were just losing their mind about how great they were. But I think we got to address the elephant in the room. People are like, wait a minute, they're $75. So
yes. And we had a conversation about this, which was
we did. So
how do we realistically price these things and get them made? Because especially your gear, it's near impossible to replicate. And how do we replicate it so that it looks like your gear and it doesn't just look like a bunch of shitty splatter paint thrown on it? So let's get into some of the weeds on this. Like your gear alone, I think the jacket, and then you get into the shoulder pads, the forearms. I mean, these are literally hundreds of pad prints, or tampo prints, as they're often called. And then there's an amazing amount of hand painting that has to be done. So if we talk about, let me ask you this: what do you guys know about spray masks, tampos, water decals, or different way that people put decoration on figures?
We know nothing. That's why we're
here. Nothing. I
All right.
know, like Figures Toy Company. If a guy's a tattoo, they do this weird, like, I think it's a water decal that you can like pick off with your finger if you wanted to, like your fingernail. You can scrape it off. It's not a high quality thing. Yeah.
So water decals are definitely something that you can do. That is one way, and it's almost like if you remember old model kits and stuff where you get it wet and you transfer it.
Yeah.
That's the basic water decal. What if you want to get something really nice? Like I'm holding up the other stuff, like these. Let's see here. You want those logos?
Yeah.
So those logos are tampo prints. And so what a tampo print is basically I'm going to draw here.
We got an art show too.
And somebody's gonna laugh at my drawing because it looks a little suspect here. All right. I can't see the camera and me, but so this is basically a silicon like boob, for lack of a better description.
Okay.
And it's a soft silicone, and at the bottom, and then that is then put on oil and water. So the ink is the oil and then water. And so just like if you're talking about lithography or different kinds of printing, wherever there's oil, it will pick up the paint, and wherever it's smooth, the water will repel the oil. And so it will come down, squish, flatten out to pick up the ink, and then come back up. And then you make a jig that holds your plastic part in place so it's in the right place. You put it in, and this silicone thing drops down, squishes down, and prints just where the ink is, where the oil was, your logo, and comes back up. But by proxy of that, it has to go onto a flat surface, or it can be some slight contours, but it has to go on a flat surface. So if you're talking about something like your shoulder pads or your forearm pads, you can't use tampo prints. The other thing is that tampo prints are not very wide in nature. So in a case of like your knee pads on this figure, there's a set of tampo prints the left side, and then there's a whole different set of tampo prints for the right side. And then they have to register those tampo prints so that they line up.
And then what about the splatter paint?
The splatter paint on that one?
Yeah, like so then they're tampoing and then going back in, and
every single one of those is a tampo, and every single drop of paint there, if registered, is a tampo print. Now, if I'm doing this 90 degrees or so, I might be able to have a spot here and a spot here. And the reason it can work on these knee pads because the paint never really crosses over. There's a couple spots where you've got two colors, but for the most part, they're not connected. They're not lines that are going around the surface. So if I'm trying to register, a line going around your knee pad, I've got two tampos coming around here that will have to meet perfectly in the center. Or you have two on this side and you put a third in the center to come across it. What a lot of people will do is they'll do two that are here and one that's ever so slightly wider that comes across the top. And then you'll see the little lines and zigzags. So you can't get a tampo to go any further than that. And that's how you register the paint. So in a case like the forearms, though, what you do is you mask it off and you spray. So in this case, they've got a metal mask that covers this 90 degrees of your arm, the top half. That's metal across this side and just leaves this area open. And they spray it with an airbrush, put it on a tray to dry. Flip it over 180, put the metal, a different metal mask over that side of it, hold it up, airbrush it, put it on a tray to dry. And that's how you get this 360, but you can tell it's been painted. It's thicker. It doesn't have this very delicate quality that you get with the tampo prints. And then obviously on stuff like that, then they come back and do like dry brush or different things on top of that. But like, pop off your head here.
A dry brush is like how you get the denim look.
Exactly. That's literally somebody after it's painted with a brush, dabbing it in paint and painting it on there and then kind of wiping it a little bit to get the texture and the detail. So
Got it.
What's hard to remember about these figures, and when people go, why don't you make this in the States, is because, your average figure has about 175 to 200 tampo prints or paint applications, excuse me, not tampos, paint applications of a variety of sorts. And we're talking about some of these stuff that you guys are trying to do. We're talking about 600. So it's all of a sudden, it's just like, it's like, we're not going to stop. We're just going to go all the way to Crazy Town, because I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it accurate, which means it needs to be registered. If it's going to be registered versus just randomly splattered, then we've got to tampo or spray mask it is the only way to do it, or draw each one by hand. Where normally if you're getting like a blood splatter, it's just somebody there with like a toothbrush doing this, but you get big globs of paint. Well, with how fine the detail is on your jacket, we can't have big globs of paint. Like, it has to be a very specific thing. So where it gets really complicated is things like your boots and your forearms and your shoulder pads. Like if you've got that image where it's the shoulder pads and stuff, if you zoom in, I'm just on a roll now. I'm not taking
keep going. No, we love it.
The shoulder pads you're talking about.
Yeah, zoom in on one of the shoulder pads if you can.
That's as much as I can go. But.
As much as you can. Okay. So obviously these shoulder pads are individual pieces and the forearms are individual pieces. Why don't we start with the forearms? So first off, the forearm sleeves are trickier than normal. So these are a soft silicone that goes across. Now, I can do a 2-part mold that goes this way that has the spikes on the top, so nothing is drafting. But then I also have to have a 3rd-part mold that's a slide that does the interior. So I've actually got to turn this into a 3-part mold instead of a 2-part mold, so it gets more expensive there. But now I'm trying to register paint coming around and over, but I can't do tampo prints around your spikes, because if we're talking about that silicone dropper, the spikes are in the way. So then that means I have to turn that into a metal spray mask to have somebody come in there and hit it, or have somebody literally paint it. Even more so, all the sort of colorful blood rings you have around the spikes, So somebody's got to go in there. We've got to tampo in on, say it's that right arm. There's probably 20 or 30 tampos or masks that we can get in there just for the paint splatters. Then when I get the paint splatters done, I can use a mask to paint the white of the 3 bones. Then I'll have somebody has to go in by hand and paint the little colorful blood lines coming out of the bones. And then they've got to come back in by hand and dry brush in the texture, the brown texture on the tooth. And that's for one armband.
Oh my God.
And that one armband would probably take 25 paint applications to get done.
Sorry.
And that's one armband. Then I've got to do the other. Then we've got to come in and do the same thing across the jacket top. And the back of the jacket's actually the easiest part, because it's flat space.
It's
and there's
more surface,
room, but we can tampo pretty much everything. And then the silver along the edge is actually a spray mask. So we'll put that in, mask off the edge, and just go in and paint in the edge. But every single one of those paint splatters, the orange, the pink, the purple, the green, the blue, every one of those is going to be a tampo. And so, like, if we're talking about that blue that kind of comes like this across the bottom, like that blue is going to be one tampo. But the blue that's above it, the tampo is not big enough to hit that. So that has to be a different tampo. And the blue that's above that has to be because you can't get a tampo of more than about that big. Sorry if I I got to get around the count.
So I guess my next question would be that then said factory charges you per hit.
So I get a charge for every paint application because it's a step. It's paint application costs X amount of dollars. If it's a tampo print, if it's a spray mask, if it's dry brush, if it's hand paint, they're all different prices. But then I also have to pay for all the tampos. So each tampo that you make is about $50. So every time I make one of those little silicone tampos, it's about $50. Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking about some like that whole jacket, everything with all the spikes and everything, and you say, okay, that's 150 tampos. All right, well, that's $7,500 just to make the rubber stamps. Then I'm going to pay, 3 cents per tampo or whatever it is, but that's another $4,500, and and it just escalates. And so when you hear about all those old stories, the famous story about G.I. Joe, why Snake Eyes is all black, is because they had a budget of like 20 paint apps per figure. And they were going back and forth on how they were going to do it. And they said, all right, we're going to take all the paint apps from one figure and give each other one like 2, so we could have 22 in all figures. And then we'll just make this guy all black. And they thought he would be the least popular of the bunch. But instead he became the most popular because he was all black. But it was because they had to save the tampos from the paint application cost from him on the others. And obviously, as we've all grown older, as manufacturing has gotten more inexpensive, as technology has gotten better, you can get away with more and more and more and more and more. And so now we're in the age of plaid, if you will, when it comes to paint apps and deco, where it's like, yeah, sure, 200 paint apps, no big deal. It would be unheard of 20 years ago.
So what you're also saying is that I am the Snake Eyes of Wave 2 because I don't have paint splatter and I'm in mostly black.
You don't have paint splatter, but you got a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, Brian, there we go.
What are the difficulties of my figure?
Flames.
The flames, the flames on the side, those get tricky registering because you have to register them all. And if they don't register, they come out. And then getting into some of the stuff that's on your jacket, the details of all the texture around all the denim.
Major Pod pins I have on there, my logo. We haven't seen a picture of me without the jacket. There's flames all up my back too, by the way. So I don't know if anyone's smarting you up to that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he knows that. That's what costs all the money.
I'm saying Matt and I have not seen pictures of jacketless Brian.
So you get into yours where it's not as obvious that it's like, oh, it's all these, like Matt's is much easier to be like, oh, here's a color. Like same thing with those boots. You got to figure that we're probably having to do 3 pad prints to go around, but all of them have to be registered. It gets to be, it's really difficult. With yours, it's a lot more like the time involved in all the dry brushing and all that stuff. Like when they're painting that jacket and they're going, okay, it's a base blue. We're going to hit it with some light highlights and we want to have some dark shadows. So it's 2 levels of dry brush, but I'm painting this entire area. There's a big difference between, and let me back up. There's a big difference between dry brushing and wiping. And we can't wipe in this point. So the wipes are actually the easiest. And that's usually what you see on toys is that somebody will take, it's a base level, say flesh colored plastic, right? And they'll spray it darker brown. And then they will literally take paint solvent, wipe over the whole figure. So all that's left is dark in the nooks and crannies. And so that gives it 2 colors. And people will be like, oh man, they did so much work. And it was like, no, man, that was like the easiest thing on God's green earth to do.
That's WCW Toy Biz is what that reminds me of.
Yeah.
But but it in some cases it's great to do, but that's a very easy and inexpensive paint version. When you start getting into dry brushing, like same thing, like if I'm going to go in here and do those lights and darks and I'm going to do it through dry brushing, it's literally somebody with a paintbrush coming in there and then touching it up, usually with a Q-tip and cleaning it up. But they've got to come back in and then dry brush the highlights, which are your lighter colors in the denim. You can't use any solvent anymore because then you'll erase the dark shadows that you used in the beginning. So you literally have to like they're not like I'm taking a big brush and dry brushing this whole thing. It's like I've got a little like hairline brush, and I'm sitting here going through your jacket, painting in all those little highlights. And
Okay, so
that stuff takes a long time.
okay,
and so it gets really
expensive.
expensive.
We're expensive and time consuming now. We're at.
Well, it's same thing. Like if you want to just dry brush a highlight and have somebody hit it really quickly, and you don't have a second color, it's not as bad. But if you're having both shadows and highlights on something, now you can't come back and fix it if you fuck it up. So somebody could spend all the time, get all the darks right on your jacket. Then they could get all the highlights around 3/4 of your jacket. Now they've done the front, they've done the back panel, they're coming back around on the right front, and they're brushing it. And if they mess up, there's no fixing it. Mm-hmm. Like you literally have to clean the entire thing all the way off, start all the way back over with your darks, make sure they blend in with the lights that you've already painted on the back and redo it. And so it's weird to say that like it's skilled labor, but literally you're paying then for like somebody that's really good at painting to come through and do all that stuff.
Gotcha.
And
I think a lot of fans, including ourselves, didn't realize how much actually goes into this, that people are actually hand painting certain details. I think people just think this is like an assembly line and here we go. There's a splatter. There it is. It's not as simple as that.
I think the oversimplification is that in almost all cases, and there's one case that I can tell you that's not the case, but in almost all cases, every little detail you've got in there, somebody is hand painting it or hand facilitating that paint. So even if I'm talking about tampo print, there's a person taking that,
sure it's right,
putting it in the jig, making sure it's perfectly straight so that the tampo, and that's why when people are like, the eyes are crooked, it's like that eye is off by like 128th of an inch.
Yeah.
And that's that guy trying to get it perfect in that jig so that that tampo can hit it just right. And there's always every paint app, there's a person there. The only time that really doesn't happen is when you're talking about 3D printed faces, which you will see on some of the other wrestling figures, where literally they'll put them in an oversized 3D printer, and it's the plastic, and they literally are like laser printing the faces on.
Oh, it's the worst. We hate that.
And then they turn them over and they laser print the other side down, and here's your beard. That's the only time it's not sort of like a hand, but in pretty much every other case, like, I can use this, like when you're talking about this here, like somebody went in with a brush. I keep doing it backwards here.
Yeah,
somebody went in with a brush and painted in that dark part of your zipper. Somebody with a brush came in and painted in the purple on that logo. Where that is tampo. But somebody went in and had to mask off, paint the black, wait for it to dry, come back, mask off the silver here, paint the silver. All of this back here, this one is one color dry brushing. So they've gone back in and just done shadows. So that made it a little bit better rather than highlights as well. So it's only two colors, the innate material color and then the darker color. We don't have a third color on top of that. Same thing, like this mask around the bottom of this jacket was probably 3 masks, one for this side, one for the back, one for down here. Then somebody came back in probably and hand painted with a brush that silver zipper. And every single one of those things is a step. Like all I do is paint the zipper. I paint the zipper, put it on a tray. Paint the zipper, put it on a tray.
Oh my God.
Wild to me.
I will do that for how many thousand figures you make. And then once those are dry, it goes on to the next person and the next person. So
I really, really don't think the average collector thinks like this or has any idea that, what goes into it. I think they just think these things are made by robots on conveyor belts and, it's done.
No,
I certainly did.
Yeah.
Huh?
I did. That's what I thought.
No. I mean, that's ultimately why so much of this stuff is made overseas is when when these go into production, they set up like assembly lines essentially. And you're talking about 75 people working on these for
Wow.
4 weeks. Like you're paying for humans. And then there's somebody right now that I'm sure is going like, and these guys are getting paid $2 a day. It's like, there's probably factories out there where they are getting paid $2 a day. But for the factories that we're using, everybody that, we all have to have compliance. So we have Disney compliance. I have to have Target compliance. I have to have Universal compliance. I have to have Nickelodeon compliance. Everybody has like, there's all sorts of local laws and everything. It's like, no, people can actually live and make a living doing this. Like,
yeah,
it's still not the same as it is here, but you also doesn't cost as much to live there. So you're actually, it's not like a indentured servitude factory craziness. It's like, no, these guys work at the factory and make a living. It's still a factory job, no different than if you're in, middle of America working a factory job. It's a factory job, but you try to make it and work with the factories that are really good at it. And, but the core reality is this person doesn't make as much as somebody here. And that's why it went away, because if we were trying to make this in the States, this would have to be $250 because you'd have to pay somebody
to do all that. Yeah.
You can't even pay somebody. I mean, minimum wage is what, $7.50? You can't live on that shit. You'd have to pay somebody $25 an hour to do this stuff. And then who's going to want to paint that belt buckle, a couple thousand times?
Right.
And then move on 2 days later to this. It's like, it's hard work. So I'm on a fucking tangent now. I apologize.
Well, no, I think this is great stuff, because I knew it wasn't as easy as people think, but I didn't realize it was difficult, and that's me.
Yeah, same.
So the common fan, their mind is probably exploded right now. But what I love about our relationship is like the transparency that we have with each other and our fans. And the day before launch, we spoke on the phone about this price increase, and essentially you made us. We had the choice, and I said,
I said, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, listen, do I wish these were $75? Of course not. I wish these were the same price, the other Ultimates, but we could not, jeopardize our integrity. And we've been hyping up these figures, and we selfishly, as fans, I know what they're supposed to look like. We can't, backpedal. And you were all for it. You backed us up, and I understand why some fans are upset. Like, listen, it's a lot of money. We can't sit here and pretend it's not. But I also will say it's definitely going to be worth it. I'll say that too.
Think, it's hard because obviously, if I can sell these things cheaper, it'd make my job a whole lot easier.
Right.
It's like, it's not exactly the best business model to be like, we got to make it more expensive.
Right.
We are not an essential item. I'm not bread or milk or, I'm not clothing.
I don't know.
I am not.
Major Pod Ultimates sound pretty essential to me, but
it is to me in my life.
Yeah. I'll stay out of this.
We are at best, we are a luxury good. At worst, we're fun. It's nothing, no part of this. So the more difficult I make it for you to buy it, price increases or whatever, the less likely people are going to be to buy it. So, I'm not trying to get one over on everybody, but there's a radical difference between what we're making and what you can buy for $19.99 in mass. And I'm not trying to trash that product. That product exists like it is for a reason, but you can take any of those products that off the shelf, and you can, if you want to backwards engineer it, you can figure out the formula, like maximum 35 paint hits per figure, maximum amount of this per figure. I mean, there's and faces 3D printed, boom, done. But it serves a purpose. That's what they have to do to get it on shelf at that price. But they also have to be able to sell, I don't know all their numbers, but it's not thousands. It's, is it 50,000 minimum, 40,000 minimum, 100,000 on the better sellers? And they're averaging,
to our understanding, at least. Yeah. Yeah.
They're averaging that $40,000 seller with another one that's going to sell 100,000. And then they're going to reuse the tooling later. There's there's very little tool reuse in all this stuff. I'd prefer it if you guys didn't change your outfits and we could just recolor it.
To be fair, that when we picked these outfits and went for it, we were trying to keep that in mind. We're like, well, if we can get new ring jackets, we can keep pretty much everything else the same except the middle fingers. But then obviously,
but I went a little too crazy.
It went off the rails, but that's what we tried to do initially.
At the same time, it's like, as you guys will say about yourselves, it's like, how many times do we get a chance to make these? So let's just make the craziest, coolest, gnarliest one ever.
Let's go.
I mean, that was my mindset.
I was like, we can't backpedal, and it would just be so disingenuous to do that. That's not what we're about. That's not what you're about. Let's just go. So if you're in, we're glad you're with us. If you're not, we'd love to have you, but we understand why. Maybe that price point.
I can't get mad at anyone for not buying it.
No.
I think for all of us on here, we were just like, how do we make the figure that we want to have? And
right.
Unfortunately, that means it's going to exclude some people.
Sure.
But there's only so many times we get to do this. So let's do the one we want. That way, I used to always tell people is like, if I get stuck with a basement full of figures, I'd rather have a basement full of figures that I'm psyched on rather than a basement full of figures I'm bummed out on that I cut corners on.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so another thing I want to touch on is so we put these pictures out, or you put them out, and a lot of our fans are like, oh my God, these face sculpts are so much better than the first series. And we're like, no, they're the exact same sculpts. It's just the paint. These are obviously hand painted. So there's a lot more, attention to certain details. But what can we do for the series 2 where the faces are? Because I don't know why. I guess I can understand why people were complaining about the first faces. But I mean, the sculpts are incredible. We've seen the unpainted.
I have the renders. The render is breathtaking. I've seen it.
I think what we run into, and it's more obvious on you, Brian, than it is on Matt. To be honest, what happened? I mean, you see it even happening here though a bit in these renders. Like if you pull up that render again, it's been driving me crazy on these renders. For some reason, your front of your face where your eyebrows are looks like it's folded flat. I know that's not the case, but it represents like your head's coming around and then it just looks like it's like your eyes and forehead have been just slammed flat. Keeps driving me crazy because I know that's not what it is. I think what happened here, and we've talked about this, is your figure did not show up with the correct dry brushing on it in both the hair and beard. It showed up with a very little bit, but not all the stuff that we had in the original one.
Yeah.
And the sculpts are all there and the detail is all
for
there.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. It's just that
a lot of people have said the eyes.
It's that same thing where
the eyes.
The eyes themselves, you can argue. Here we go. Are they small? I mean, if I look at your eyes right now, here's the other thing. If I look at your eyes right now, I can see your pupils. I can't really see the whites of your eyes, but mostly I see shadow inside your eye sockets and a little bit underneath your eyes. Uh-huh. In these figures, when you hold this up and somebody's got it in the light, you can look in there. There's a little bit of paint, but there's not a lot of painted in shadow in there. And I think that what we've got to do on this next wave is paint in tonally some material inside and have it soft fade out the edges here and here and a little bit right along the jawline near the scalp so that when you look at it, the color doesn't flatten out. The color, it implies volume. And I think that's roughly what we're running into here is because when you hold this in the, because everybody holds it under like the light bulb, it's like 10,000 watts. And they're like, why isn't this, and it's like, it's because there's no tone change from here to here. It's the same color all the way across versus if we look at any of you in real life and we like, I'm not trying to pick on Brian, but like right now, Brian, I've got a highlight that's coming around here. Then I've got a second color that comes across here, across your brow ridge, a third darker, almost red color right here. And then you're getting some light that's coming out right at your hairline again. If I paint your face to look like that, you look like you've got war stripes on. But I've got to find a way. I've got to actually add a little bit of color to you guys' sculpts, I think, to artificially add in volume when you're looking at something that is arguably, it's somewhere between 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch wide in your face itself.
Yeah.
So that you can get the full feeling of volume to it, because the detail is all there.
Yeah, like I said, we've seen the renders. We know
100%.
that. Yeah.
Quick
Well,
question.
when you see them unpainted, you see it.
Oh yeah,
We have that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the other part in that regard is that when you paint these figures, the lines become very hard, and nothing in nature is hard. Like your beard does not have a hard edge, even if you shave it down perfectly.
Right.
I mean, Matt might really get it there, but
That's shoe polish.
Barber Day. Barber Day. You got a nice line.
This is all natural, baby.
just razor sharp, but in real life, there's none of those lines. Like if you ever talk about people that Photoshop stuff and they're like, oh, that doesn't look right. It's like you always go to the edge and feather those pixels 5 pixels so that the colors blur on top of each other. Then it'll look natural. Nothing has a hard edge, but when you paint all this stuff, it has a defined hard edge.
Yeah.
Because if you don't and it gets sloppy or it gets fuzzy, people are like, this is shitty paint. Look at how it's not even straight. And it's like, oh God, but it's that same thing. It's like, do you come, should we come underneath the beard and hairline and literally spray it with the most minute slight paint change just along the edge so that before you tampo that print, it makes your eyes see a graduation in color versus these hard lines. Those are the kind of things that I think we've got to look at better to really step up how these things look, to just get the likeness even more. Because the sculpts on here are, and I'm not saying this is the guy that made them, the sculpts on here are right on. They look just like
100%.
Oh, dude,
100%.
I have the emails, I have the picture saved. Like the render of my stuff, I thought was unbelievable. So, yeah. Do we want to talk?
I feel like I just derailed the whole conversation.
No.
Off the tracks, went through the.
No, this is the stuff we want to. This is the stuff we want to talk about. This is stuff people don't really think about, and it's eye-opening stuff for me. So I'm hoping it's eye-opening stuff for the fans listening. And Mark, you were going to say something?
Yeah. So actually, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So when these things were announced at $75, we've been, Matt, Brian, myself, we've been responding to people online answering this question. We talked about it at our live show, which is, was live on pay-per-view. We told everybody the answer. We're doing this
fucking cutting the deco.
Yeah. We're doing this interview right now, which will be on YouTube and our podcast feed. So our fans will know the deal, right? Our Facebook community, our fans will know the deal. There's still people. I feel like I've told 1 million people this already in the last couple of days. And there's still people like just randomly commenting on our YouTube. Why are the figures $75? So I think the general
we're never going to be able to educate everybody. It's impossible.
No. I still get people asking me when I'm going to ship NJPW1. When are you going to ship NJPW1? It's like that was already done. What? Yeah, done a while ago.
Really
so the question is there like an internal? I mean, do you guys like? Well, we'd like to get the message out, or is this kind of the plan here? Just there's a lot of people. There's a lot of wrestling community that might not be part of our community that might not see this per se.
I think we run into this a lot where we try to get the word out. I try to go out and talk to people and try to give them as much information as I can about why we do what we do. There's a certain amount of people that no matter what I tell them will never believe me because either they're contrarians, they're just negative in general. They don't believe that's where the world works. Or I honestly think a lot of people that we get, I think where we get the most heat is from people that really would like to buy what we are making, but the price point precludes them from buying it. And so it's much easier to be angry about it and to convince yourself that you don't like it so that you don't have to not have it.
I see.
Now that obviously paints us in a very favorable position of like, well, we made this great. But I think there's a lot of people out there that want to have this stuff, and it's frustrating for them. It's the same people that complain like, why is that figure from 1994, $200, fucking scalpers? If you just quit paying the prices, it would be down to 40. The rest of us could afford it. It's like, well, the world doesn't work that way.
Yeah. But that's the same people that go, well, WWF Hasbro figures are $4.99. Why are these $75? And it's like, why am I even explaining this to you, pal? That was 1993. Like,
yeah. I think the other thing that people don't understand, and we talked a little bit about the difference, is volume makes a huge difference. So if we talk about, like I said, say we used the example earlier, 150 tampos, at $50 each as being $7,500. If you make 1,000 figures, that is 75. Is that $75 a figure then in tampo prices? Hold on. Am I doing my math wrong?
We're dumb wrestlers.
You're asking the
wrong crew. Yeah.
Hold on. I think if it's 7,500 and we're making it with that, it's $7.50 per figure just in tampos. So if you make 10,000 figures, it's 75 cents a figure in tampos, just to get over the cost to manufacture. And I think that if we're talking about this, I think people on here are assuming that we're making tens of thousands of these figures, which we won't want to tell everybody what we make because it runs this sort of gauntlet of people wanting to monetize that. But I can guarantee you, in almost all cases, no one is making anywhere near the numbers of toys that you think they're making. Because if they were, everybody would be making them. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of people that are getting into making toys right now because we're at a point where things are getting more. Manufacturing has gotten to a point where you can make this stuff. I mean, we could argue about this all day long, probably, but 15 years ago, we would have not been able to make these figures. We really started to be able to make these figures a decade ago. And even then, 2.5 years ago is when we started making your first figures to get them out, to get to this. Like, you're just really getting to the point where manufacturing has gotten affordable for anybody that isn't a $1 billion toy company.
Right.
And which is why you're seeing so much of this cool, new, interesting, fun stuff. Now, how long will it survive? I don't know. I don't know how long all of this will go on, meaning, right now there's like 5 or 6 different people making all sorts of different independent and older wrestlers and different styles of wrestling.
We're doing it too.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk shit about you guys. No, I'm just kidding.
But like, for instance, we're making these things called major bendies. They're like bendable figures, right? They're based off these ones we loved in the mid 90s. So, but I'm not going to say how much it costs for us to make these, but for us to make any sort of profit, and trust me, we're not getting rich off these. We have to sell them for $24.99, and every day we get a message. Those were $2.99 at KB in 1998. Well, okay, that was 1998, and how many of those were they making? And this is WWF, WWE making them. How many of those were they making? Well, we're making 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But we're also in a day and age where you can find a factory that will make 1,000 of something.
Right.
Where, we still deal with it all the time. Like, there's some really great factories we'd like to be working with, but they're like, we don't touch anything under 20,000 pieces.
Wow.
Like, so I guess we won't be working with you anytime soon.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. But like, and a dumb example even of that is, and that no one will buy into on this, most likely, is like just the 7% inflation that we're dealing with this year. Let's just call it 7%. That's where the year will end. My purchasing power in China goes down 7%. So, that's equivalent to saying, okay, I'm going to pay $20 for this figure. Well, now I've got to pay $21.40 for that figure. That figure just got $1.40 more expensive for me to make, just by existing this year.
Right.
And that's a constant thing that's going. And so when people are like, the price is going up. It's like the price is always going up.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, but you know, we deal with that. You know, exchange rate fluctuations make a difference. It's crazy. Like the war in Ukraine fucked up vinyl for like 6 months. Like now, like vinyl's gone through the roof. It went through the roof first with COVID, and now because of the war with Ukraine, I'm like, how does the war in Ukraine change what I'm dealing with in vinyl in China? But still, vinyl's downstream from oil production. So it's all convoluted somewhere along the way. And then, nope, there's another 20% material cost bump.
Damn.
You know, it's like, anyways, I've gotten very off tangent now.
I have a very random question.
Pull me back in, Brian. Come on.
Is there something in the business model of Super 7 over the years that with the pre-order where it wasn't successful, where you got burnt because you're already committed to like you know what I mean? You're not hitting those numbers. Like, you know, you thought you're going to sell thousands of this, but it was hundreds. And is that happen to you guys?
Yeah, it's happened a couple times. Because if I get to the point where I've put it out for pre-order, I've committed to tooling already.
Right.
And that's the big expensive part. And that's the part where if you're talking about something that costs, I mean, you guys know, let's for easy math's sake, it's not the price, but for easy math's sake, say it's $10,000 in tooling and I sell 1,000 figures. Well, that's $10 a figure. If I sell 5,000 figures, it's $2 a figure. If I sell 10,000 figures, it's $1 a figure. So yeah, and you're talking about tooling on stuff like this gets real expensive real quick. We usually feel confident, but we've had a couple that have not gone great. Ren and Stimpy come to mind. That's why we reissued it. But we also reissued it because the secondary market was crazy for the Ren and Stimpy Ultimates that we made because we didn't make very many. But the reason that we went with the whole pre-order business to begin with is we're not speculating. First off, we all know with all this stuff like, oh, it came out, it sold out in 30 seconds online. Now I'm paying a scalper twice as much and all that other stuff. It's fucking it's terrible. I just want to be able to buy this thing. Just let me buy it. Let me send you my money. So we open it up for a month. Everybody that wants one gets to buy one. There's no rush. You can wait till next paycheck. Shoot, you might be able to wait till 2 paychecks. Right. You know, you can get it as long as you want it. But then when I make it, I don't make too few and leave people out in the cold, but I also don't make too many and then have a warehouse full of them that I can't sell that I've sunk my money into. I make exactly how many that people want. The unintended consequence, of course, of it is, unless people have bought it for resale later, is that there's none for anyone else that decides later on that they want one without having to buy it off somebody else. That is the unintended consequence.
I feel like that's always going to happen, right? With a Super 7 product.
You know,
I think people go, oh, I saw New Japan 1 and I didn't think they looked so hot. And then people get them go, dude, these are pretty badass figures. And then it's like, oh shit. And then it's
called FOMO.
Yeah, it's this catch-up game, you know. And then
there is a bit of that. I mean, that's the unintended side effect of it. But the intention is to make it easy to buy. My job is to make it easy for you to try to buy my figures. Now, if I charge $75, I'm clearly not trying to make it easy. But, you know, it's how, you know, and this was the conversation was like, what do we want this to be? And it's not about, and it sounds crass, but it's not about what does the fan want it to be. It's what does Matt and Brian want it to be? And Matt's like, no, I want this to be perfect. I want this to be the greatest version of me ever. It's better than real life Matt.
That's right. It is.
That's right.
And I mean, because we were going back and forth all day, really. But like, I knew right away when you told me, I'm like, we have to go balls to the walls. We have to do it the right way. Pretend like we didn't have a weekly podcast dissecting wrestling figures. You know, just for me, like the fan of wrestling figures, I need it to be perfect. But then we have this reputation where like we can't, put something out where we know in our heart of hearts it's not the best thing out there, and then try to talk about it and hype it. That's just not us. We're as authentic as they come, whether you love us or hate us. You might not like us.
That would have been zero fun for however long this process is.
And when we started talking about these figures a couple of years ago, we were like, let's just make the figures, the coolest figures that we can make on our end. And, we would have these weekly, check-ins right at the beginning. And you were like, can I come with the dog tags? You're like, yeah, I can come with the dog tags. What about the microphone? Can we have the microphone? Yeah. We can have the microphone. So can it come with an action figure of me? He's like, yeah, we can have it. It was like, you're waiting in and you're like, can we do this? It's like, yeah, sure. Let's make the one you guys want to have. And then it was like, all right. Then it was like, then once we got to like there, then it was just like, all right, now the gates are open. I'm comfortable.
And this isn't a shot at Mattel or Jazzers because there's no way they could be this hands-on with every talent. But we were fortunate to have wrestling figures by Jax or Mattel. When you see it, when it's out.
When it's out, that's the first time you see it. You're not part of the process.
You get no input. You see that picture online for pre-order. You're like, oh, that's incorrect. That's inaccurate. Well, tough shit.
It's like way beyond fixing. Yeah.
And even if you wanted to fix it, they're not going to fix it for you. Like luckily we did have some ins with Mattel where if we caught things early on, I think like Brian was able to add his daughter's tattoo, right?
Yeah, because I think when we first talked, Madison wasn't even born, and then I got the matching. So for sure,
right?
Yeah,
but that's because we're wrestling figure fans, and you gave a shit. Another wrestler's not going to go to the fan fest and check out the figure in hand. You know what I'm saying? So we had this opportunity to be as hands on as we've ever been. So we took advantage of it, and we thank you guys for letting us live out our dreams. As corny as it sounds,
Well,
as a dad, that's like one of the coolest things ever.
There you go. And see, this test shot doesn't have it.
Oh, send it back. Send it to me, whatever you want to do.
There we go. I was about to say, I already know the actual answer to that, which is, please send that to my house. This is my address.
Brian, we can't let you go without a little bit of Super 7 gossip, if you will.
No.
We know these fellas are working on round 2. What can you tell us about that?
What can I tell you about that?
The good brothers, that is, for everyone listening at home.
Is that I'm fairly confident I will put this out there. The Good Brothers will not be $75.
Will not.
They will not.
But will we?
But we are working on. Yeah.
The tattoos, I'd say, on Gallows were pretty.
Hold on. Let me just.
Pretty much the craziest.
I have versions of Gallows.
This is breaking news, by the way, folks. This is breaking news.
I gotta find it. I have versions of Gallows. I'm saying that, and I'm like pulling up like these Gallows.
Yeah.
We have Gallows with his tattoos on the correct arms, and somehow, when it went to production, they were like, "It's the same thing, just swap the arms."
Yeah. And
they redid the tattoos on the other arms. So
and they're like, I would say like 30 degrees, kind of not where it should be on his body.
Well, this is the other thing with them, which is you go back down to tampo prints. These are tampo prints.
Yeah. So how do you do?
Getting them around everything, and they're like, okay, I can go here, here, and here, and so then they put it in the box. Like, here's the one part there they don't connect.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's put that part forward versus doing this, and so they exaggerated its worst feature, if you will. But that's the same thing. That's the thing that we can fix when we're at the factory. And I say this because we were just at the factory in Vietnam, and we're working on a Wave of Turtles there, and we're working on 2001. And it's the same thing. It was like 2001, they're almost identical, but he was like, oh, they had the left and the right calves swapped. And it's like, they're almost the same thing, but it's real easy in manufacturing to screw things up because they're not building a whole. They're building a piece.
Yep.
The guy that's assembling arms is just assembling an arm. He's putting a hand into a forearm. Another guy's putting a forearm into an elbow, So
Machine Gun's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
It was Gallows who had a little.
No, it's Doc. Doc got a couple things. He also got the broken.
Right, the
beard.
mail away. Hey, I got it right here. The mail away head, which I thought was a very commendable thing.
Yeah,
I
to
mean,
your credit, you sent the corrected head out to everybody.
who does that? Not other toy companies do things like that.
Yeah, and hopefully it wasn't. It's the same thing. Like it was correct, and then it showed up, and it's like, what? Wait, where's the? They're like, oh, it broke.
I mean, it is.
That's what they said. It broke in the tool.
It is.
Oh,
If you see
man.
it's tiny. Look at that. There it is.
It's cool though.
It's awesome. I mean, it's great, but I
they
understand
told
how
us
it broke
was-
off. Yeah.
What they told us is that when they were injecting one, it broke in the tool, and then they just were injecting it.
It was
And
just
so-
stuck in there. Wow.
It was stuck in there. So we just got a whole run, and there's nobody at the factory on our end looking at them as they come off the line. These guys don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They're like head.
Right.
Head. They're doing this. Are the eyes straight? Are the eyes straight? Are the eyes straight? Yes,
Right.
the eyes are straight. Cool. That's what So we replaced his head, and we will make sure that everything is correct on the next set of him. And
Any ETA on that next set to excite
What's that?
fans a little bit? Any ETA on Good Brothers
Hold on.
Wave 2?
let me see. Let me try to pull up my calendar. See if it's in here.
I know we've been helping them as they get, renders. We've been trying to help
You tell them,
along the way.
Gallows, you did not wear that shirt.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know. They literally don't know.
They're like, yeah, don't care. No,
Yeah.
that's not.
They
true.
care. They care. They just don't understand or know. So Matt and I are helping.
Major is here, July. I think it looks like it's November.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
Looks like it's November.
And I really
That's
dug.
a little bit of a ways away, I realize, but it's just like we want to make sure that we get that time, get them in there,
Sure.
and get them all dialed
And,
in.
and don't worry, we'll look over their emails for you to make sure everything's okay.
I really dug Blackstrap Andre. I'm excited about that. I guess that was pretty successful for you guys.
Yeah, it did pretty well. Obviously that is the Andre that most people know. The head sculpt, I was so happy we did Crazy Eyes Andre. That was the one that I was like, we kept waiting for. I was like, oh, I just want that. I mean, obviously with Andre, it's that same thing. We've been making them since the beginning, and then everybody's always like, those heads don't even look like Andre. And it's like, I think most people view Andre as Andre from The Princess Bride, rather than like, would you please go look at what Andre looked like when he was younger and svelte?
Right.
Like when he actually was bigger here than here.
Yeah.
Like he was a very different looking human being.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As he got older, his physical features, exaggerated more and more and more and more and more. And so now we're getting into Andre that most people understand when they look at them. They're like, oh, that looks like Andre, rather than sort of like, Jerry curl is not the right word, but the tight, kinky, short on top, a little bit long in the back. Andre,
that's heel turn Andre to me.
Heel turn. I love it.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm gonna ask you, Brian, is besides the Good Brothers and the Major Bros and Andre, you think
that's awesome?
You think we might see some more wrestling stuff down the line from Super 7? I don't want to, we don't need to name names, but
this is a lead from both Matt and Brian as they're trying to lead us to water on what should have been NJPW Wave 3 that hopefully will be Independent Wrestlers Wave 3. But we have we are trying, I don't want to say anything without talking to those guys in that way, but we're trying to get most of those wrestlers on their own to do individual figures. And they seem 3 out of 4 seem very receptive to it. And
who would say no?
What's that?
Right.
Who would say no?
Yeah, right. I don't know I don't know
answer
a wrestler that would be like, no, I don't want an ultimate of myself.
Oh, Dolph Ziggler, baby.
Maybe. No, money talks. He would do it too. He just wouldn't care about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's that ongoing conversation with every wrestler, which is we show up and say, here's the version of you that we want to make. And they're like, especially in this case, like, here's this version of you that we want to make. And they're like, I love it, but I want to do me now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, this one's finished and I can get that one out now and I can do new you later because it's going to take time to get there. And they're like, okay, I understand, but I want to do me now. Right.
And even you now, when that's in your hand, is going to be you a year from now. So even that, it's tough to process.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to get there. Everybody's been very nice about it. You guys have been an amazing help. So just putting it out there publicly behind the scenes, Brian and Matt trying to take care of y'all. You think it's all in front of the camera? Oh no. Behind the scenes.
Selfishly, we want it for us. We want it for our collection. So it just so happens that we're helping some fans.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Yeah, of course. Of course, I want all these things in my collection. Yeah. I guess one last wink and a nod. Are we working on any other like legends of wrestling, maybe, or other names like that? Are you talking?
There might be a couple names out there. Yes, for everybody here. I also go straight to the source. All right, you guys, we want to make this guy. And they're like, well, this has been done. 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 How do we do this, this, and this? So I'm trying to glean insights from the major podcast on where to go.
We appreciate that.
Which we are working on. A lot of this will probably come into fruition in early 23, only because we have a lot of other things we're working on. And then you start something new. We need to sculpt it, get it approved, get everybody. The reason Ultimates actually take longer to make than regular toys is I've got to go through that whole approval and production, and not production, but whole approval sculpt process to get to a final looking thing. But I actually haven't started making anything. And then we sell it. Then I have to start the making of the thing. So it ends up taking a lot longer. So in some of these wrestlers that we're talking about right now that no one else knows what we're talking about, we're putting stuff in front of them, but we haven't really gotten to sculpt yet. So then that's going to take several months of back and forth, then getting all the imagery and everything ready to sell, talking to some of those key partners like Ringside ahead of time, making them aware of what's coming, then getting it ready to show everybody.
Got it.
Gotcha.
Shout out to the fine folks at Ringside for always supporting us.
And before we let you go, we have one final question, a debate, if you will. There's been a big Super 7 discussion throughout the Major Pod universe, and it revolves around Disney Ultimates.
Oh my God.
And I'll let Matt take it. I'll let Matt take it from here.
All right. Hold on.
You know what? I'm going to bust out, just because I'm so proud of it, I'm going to bust out my autographed Super 7.
So
we're talking about this.
So many of our fans, they get us to sign the figure. Look how beautiful it looks in that paint pen. So Mark and I, we were discussing on the podcast, well, what if you, for instance, took that Fantasia Sorcerer Mickey and brought it to Disney World or Disneyland, and you got Mickey to sign it in a paint pen, right? It has to be Sorcerer Mickey. It can't just be like the Mickey, at one of the character breakfasts.
Mickey doing this,
right? No. It has to be that Mickey in that outfit. Do you support us as grown men going to Disney World or Disneyland with
keep
our
in mind,
Super 7?
Keep in mind, several of our fans have already done this,
right? With our done. Super 7
Looks
in our
great.
Backpacks with the paint pen. Because when you're in the park, that's not some guy under the costume. That's Mickey Mouse, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So if Mickey Mouse is signing the Super 7, that's as good as Matt and Brian signing theirs, in my opinion. What say you, Brian?
You know what? Without sounding creepy, I am all for adult men playing with their toys as they like.
Okay.
I don't know.
Does it have to be Does it have to be Sorcerer Mickey, or can you get any Mickey to sign?
No, it has to be Sorcerer Mickey.
If it's Sorcerer Mickey, it has to be Sorcerer Mickey. I mean, that's.
But then Brian made a good point. Then does Brian or I need to be in our exact gear when we sign that figure? I said,
in that case, I've never signed one in my life.
No, but you guys, I think that. Oh man, it gets
confusing, right?
It's a croissant of complexities here.
But
we wanted
I
to
don't
do
know.
com-
I
we
still feel
wanted
like
to do
because
Comic Con
Sorcerer
in our
Mickey
gear.
is available, Sorcerer Mickey is available for you to get, so
Yes.
it's probably okay.
right.
But I probably can't fault somebody for getting regular Mickey to assign it. That said, generally for me, I don't get people to actually sign my stuff because I like the boxes too much. So I
Huh.
get them to sign something else. Like give me your 8x10 or whatever, but don't fuck
Sure.
with my toys.
Wow,
Right.
Sort of like
Interesting.
interesting take.
it's the same thing. Like people get people to sign skateboards. It drives me crazy. If you're going to sign a skateboard, sign it on the top, not on the picture on the bottom. The picture on the bottom is why I wanted it, not
Is
not
the
your
art.
signature
okay.
over the
I hear you on that.
But that's the beauty of collecting, right? We
but
can all
it
make our own
looks so
rules.
much- it looks so much better on the box like that, as you will. Like, interestingly enough, we've had people ask us in the past about printing card backs for them, 3 3/4 figures, where we make a run, just like when we're making the regular ones, make an alternate one with just a signature bar on the side so they could sign it. But
Yeah.
then they're like, nobody wants me to sign it. They want me to sign the bubble.
Mm.
Yes, of course. Yeah,
All about the bubble, baby.
all about the bubble. Yeah, that's where that's
all
the
about the
sweet
bubble.
spot. That's the sweet
Yeah, I
spot.
think that I was about to say, I think that's one of those some jams, isn't it? It's all about the bubble.
That's right. This conversation's been all over the place, but
love
I've
it.
enjoyed
I love
it.
it.
It's
Yep.
over an hour. We're very grateful for your time, Brian. I hope everybody.
I want to say thank you guys for
Yeah.
making this stuff with us. As much as you guys like to say that you're complicated and difficult, it's not there. It comes from a place of genuine love and excitement, and it allows us to make really great figures. And that's the goal. So I'm happy to be here anytime you guys want to have me.
Hell yeah.
But I'm a little too square for most of your guys, I think.
No, I love it.
No, our
No.
fans are
Some
gonna
people,
love this.
some people need to hear some of this stuff. So I hope we
I'm
educate a lot
bringing
of
the
people
tough
today.
love to the toy
Yeah.
podcast.
I hope we educated and excited people about what's to come. How about that?
And you heard it here, folks. You can get Sorcerer Mickey side by Sorcerer Mickey. Brian Flynn approves. That's the most important part of this whole interview.
The whole thing. If there's one takeaway,
Yeah.
it should be that. Yeah.
All
Should
right.
be that. Exactly.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, take care.